All right. So today I have a very artistic, brilliant, and successful animator, storyboarder for some of the largest movies, largest cartoons of all time, including Moana, including Shrek, including Raya the Last Dragon, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Mulan, Tarzan. This guy is a person who basically is making all of us enjoy and come back to our childhoods and having fun with life and making us smile. So, Jeff, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah.
So, could you look? You have a lot of success now, and you've had so many movies that you've done, so many things that you've done as an animator. What started you on the road to this particular career in your life?
Well, I started out as a musician. I studied music in college, and I always wanted to be working in animation. I always wanted to be a cartoonist. And when I'd say I auditioned, and I was in a a program in California, Disneyland, for a college program it was called the All American College Band. Okay. And while I was there, I met an animator, or someone knew of an animator, and so I went and had lunch with him on the lot, which was up in Burbank, and when I got there, he told me a little bit about what you could do to get involved. Mm-hmm. And so when I graduated from college, I went to I worked on cruise ships for a while, and I saved about $4,000 and moved to LA and started kind of going to the various studios to kind of pick up a job. Ended up getting a job, and I had $100 left in the bank. So I got a job on a show called Batman the Animated Series, which was my first show, and that was back in 1991. And I've been working steady since then, so in the animation industry.
Okay, nice. So you actually, even though you wanted to do like cartoons and drawing, all that stuff, you pursued a musician first?
Yeah.
Like how like why? Like how does that work?
Well, every story there's a girl in every story.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That's why I went into it, and it didn't work out well at all. And this is probably a PG show, so I won't tell you. So all of it. But basically, I went into music because of a girl, and then we broke up right after high school. And I was like, "What am I doing with my life?"
Oh wow!
But I continued going to music school because I wanted to go to Cal Arts, which was California Institute of the Arts, which is in Valencia, California, and it was a studio that was largely sponsored by Walt Disney. It was called Chenard Art Institute, and or School of the Arts, and then it became California Institute of the Arts, which fed a lot of the studios like Disney, which they would go to for younger talent. And I wanted to go there, but it was like $30,000 a year, which it might as well have been $3 million a year. So I couldn't really afford it, and I'd actually applied for it after my first year in music school. And they started at the beginning of the year. So I had to go back, and I spent another semester down in North Texas State studying music and waiting for the beginning of the year to start into their program. And then I showed up, and they'd lost my financial aid package. So I had nothing but a year and a half of nothing but music credits. So I decided to stay and continue and get my music degree.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so while you were doing music, were you also like drawing on the side? Were you developing this other passion you had almost secretly?
Oh, yeah, I always drew. My whole life I've drawn. Yeah, my mom was an art teacher, and I've always been fascinated with drawing. I had a lot of, in school, there were a lot of words I didn't know the meaning of, and I tended to drift off and, draw, superheroes, Batman and Superman or whatever, and that's just what I was into, Yeah, I was into comic books and jazz,
Wow.
Those were my interests.
Okay, cool. So then eventually, fine, you got a job on this Batman series.
Yep.
Okay, and what was that? Like, what job? Were you drawing Batman himself? Like, what was that?
Yeah, what the actual job was, I won't get into the super technical stuff so as to not create too much confusion, but basically we planned what they would send all the stuff overseas to actually do the full-on animation, because animation is a whole process. There's like a lot of drawings that go between each seconds, and the second of film, and this is way before computer animation, so everything's hand drawn. But we did all the planning steps at this stage, and I did a job where we did kind of keyframe posing and storyboards, and that's what was done here. Storyboards are basically the blueprint of what will become a film.
Yep.
And then so you design the characters, you do storyboards, and you do kind of keyframe posing by keyframe.
Meaning by
posing.
keyframe is like the actual shot, what it's going to look like. This is an important shot, and then what the next shot's going to be, and then someone else fills in that.
Yeah, sort of like that. I mean, basically on the keyframe kind of pose, and it was called layout. Layout is actually you're laying out how the camera moves and everything. But basically, if you have a character who's like going from here to here, it's like you do those two poses.
Okay.
And then someone else is going to do all the in betweens.
Okay.
But it was very that was just what you did then, and it wasn't full animation because they would do that overseas.
And so, an animation. Sorry. Okay. So. Overseas, just other people. Was this like China?
Yeah, Korea was doing it.
Korea, okay.
Yeah. Japan
So
and Korea.
you send off the key ones to Korea, and then they draw all the ones in between.
Yeah, basically. And they also drew, they would take the package we would send them, they would use that as reference, basically. And then they would create everything out of that whole kind of thing. And
why is that not true animation, though? It sounds like...
Well, it is true animation,
Okay.
but it's not like at Disney, what we do, you had all the artists in-house. It wasn't like done overseas. Here they would do all this whole prep work. They would send it overseas. They would actually create the product. They would, paint all the all the images and stuff and composite them all together. We would record everything here and send it over there, and then they would like create this thing and send it back. It's basically a finished product, basically. And then they put the music on here, and it becomes a full thing. And yeah. So I mean, one of the things for me, I'm one of probably the first 6 people that ever drew the character Harlequin, which is because she actually originated in the Batman animated series, and I was on the first. I did storyboards on the first episode that she ever appeared in.
Wow. So you and what do they tell you? They say make someone who looks crazy and draw it, or are they like how much direction do you get told? Hey, you have to draw Harlequin. What do they tell you?
Well, there's what's called a model sheet.
Yep.
The model is the person you're seeing, and that was designed by a guy named Bruce Timm, who also designed the whole show. It all looked very uniform. It was really cool looking, and he designed the character, what they looked like, and that's given to the people who do the storyboards or do whatever stage, and they use that as reference when they're planning out what the shot is, because each time the camera moves or cuts, you're actually planning that out in this stage called storyboards, and it's basically a blueprint for how you look at a film, and you can get a sense of what it is. And it's equated, not completely correctly, but it's basic. It can be thought of kind of like as a comic book that as
yes.
Something that will then become the product. So that's why I say it's a blueprint.
Okay, so this guy Tim, he draws the model, and that's basically the look. And is it all outfits or just one outfit for that character? Just one look? I mean, I guess in this one series, maybe it's all she's ever going to wear. But that's all done, and you just basically move this person around, or do you add parts to it?
Oh, we add a lot because we'll have a script, right? A script will be written, and they'll record the script. So you have the guy who's doing the voices. Mark Hamill did the voice of the Joker, for example, and then we'll have that as a track to listen to, and then you'll listen to it, you'll read the script, and you'll go, okay, I don't remember this. This is a long time ago, but I think there was some hyenas in the episode, right? And there was I think she kicked a dog food. Bowl, over to these hyenas, and so I mean there was a shot, and what the camera sees, and then it pans over, which means move the camera. Pans over as to wherever, to the dogs or whatever, and they start eating it. But it's what you actually see in the frame and stuff. That's the storyboard. It's like what is your choice of shot? Basically, what are you choosing to show? You're kind of like the director of photography in a sort of to that degree in the cartoon realm.
Nice.
So yeah,
Okay, and when you started there, it's your first job.
Yep.
At that point, you're basically in their eyes, kind of like a nobody.
I was a nobody.
No?
I was such a nobody.
Yeah, you were a nobody.
Oh yeah, I didn't know anything. It was, animation. There's this whole thing with it, which is very. There's a lot of technology to it in terms of techniques as far as how it's made, right? And so I generally don't tell the people the process because it's very complicated and people won't really understand it. But there's a way a camera is set up to take pictures of all these things and the way they do these things, and I had no idea what I was doing. And in fact, I mean, you've probably seen people flip the pages in animation, and there's holes in the paper, and they go on this thing called a peg bar, and that's what you use to flip them, and it's held there. But I got to saying, why are there holes in this paper? I didn't understand anything, and you have to, there's so much.
Okay, so now let's go back to that because that's very interesting. Is this flipping? That's not how the actual movie is made, or it is?
It was back then.
No,
they didn't flip them.
So how do you go from a stack of papers? You have how many drawings would be in one episode, for example?
Well, it's hard to say, really, but I mean, if you take the concept of a film, there were 24 frames of film per second.
Okay.
So there's the potential of 24 drawings per second. Now, we weren't drawing usually, every other frame, because what'll happen is you have a drawing, right,
Yeah.
and it's put on a panel, a picture. There's a background, and then they'll paint a cell, which is a celluloid, which is the drawing is put on that and colored so that you see through it. So you have a character on one level, and behind him is the background.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
And then the background doesn't change, so you'll take the character off, you'll take the next pose on, you'll take a picture. Then you'll take the character off, put the next one on, and you'll take a picture. Well, so then, the character's moving like that when you put it on film.
Okay, so it's not flipping because you don't see the actual pages moving, but for every second that goes on the TV at that time, 24 pictures were taken and just put together for every second.
Basically, the potential of 24 usually is like 12 or less.
Okay,
but
because it might not change. That's how many it goes, but the same one might show. So for a 30-minute show, you're talking about 720 potential drawings.
For one, how long?
30 minutes.
Well, yeah.
Oh, no, per second. I'm sorry. Math is so wrong. So each second, 30 minutes, 60 seconds times 24. So you're talking about 43,000. That sounds more like it. So up to 43,000, but let's say you do half. So you're talking about 20,000 pictures would be taken to make one episode.
Well, at least, yeah, because that's for everything that moves. And you'll have Batman. That'll be done, and then there might be other characters. There's a lot of drawings that go because
wow.
And the reason we were talking about like the flipping, right? The flipping is done as you're preparing this. You draw and then you use the flipping because you're flipping so that way.
Make sure the movement looks
fine.
Yeah,
it's smooth, and then when it all gets done, then it goes to the next department where they actually put it. They'll Xerox it on. They would Xerox it on celluloid and then paint the cells. And so that's when they're on that process is when they're putting them down and taking pictures of it. So
wow,
I know it's pretty.
That's a lot.
I know it's a lot of work.
So you're so how much would it be? So because one frame you're saying has multiple pictures.
Well, possibly. It depends on what you're shooting.
Okay, so in an episode, I said 30,000, 40,000 pictures for an episode. Does that sound like that's about?
It's probably quite a bit more than that. Would be
quite a bit more.
Probably
like 100,000.
No, probably over that. Yeah. I really don't know for sure because I never really did the math on it.
Okay.
But I mean, if you have two characters, I mean, that character's walking in and this other character's walking in, and
so it's double. So it's basically for every little frame there, you're gonna have 12 to 24 per person as they're moving. What if there's a cat moving too?
Yeah, there's cats.
That's 3.
Yeah. But then there's also you get into if you like have you ever seen a cartoon and you'll see a telephone or you'll see
the phone rings.
Yeah, the phone rings, but when you look at it, it looked a little funny.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it fit with the background. Well, the reason was it was called a held cell because it would be there and it would be held there indefinitely for frame. It's not moving, and then until it has to move, and then it shakes. So anyway.
You try to save it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about 100,000 pictures minimum.
Probably,
at the very least.
yeah.
Okay, something like that for an episode. Okay,
know.
cool. So fine. So now you're in it. You're like, hey, are you so pumped? You're like, I'm working in this field that I love. And
I loved it.
You're in a whole new place.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it.
So you're part of the minimum part of people living in America that were happy with their job.
I love that job.
You realize there's a very small percentage.
I know. I was very lucky.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, but and then you're at that point. I mean, again, this is a while back, but what was your pay?
Back then, I was making. I think it paid $600. I want to say it was $675 or $625 a week.
Okay.
Was what it was, which was. I mean, this is in the 90s. I just got off a cruise ship making. Nothing. And I was like, when they said I was going to make that much, that's more money than I could even conceive of. Of
wow.
course, that's not all that much money.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
But
but at that time for sure. So that's whatever. That's what $3,000 a month almost or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I guess so. Yeah.
And at the cruise ship, we're making what?
Oh, I think it's $300 a week, maybe.
Okay, so more than double you're making. Okay, good. So now you're there for a while, and how long does this go on? And then where do you find your next role?
I worked on that job for 2 years.
Okay.
And it was great, and I loved it. And it was because every day was a learning experience, and I was always, you're developing yourself, you're drawing more, and I mean, the way you get better at drawing or anything is you just do it, and you have a lot of pencil mileage I was building up, learning how to draw more and more.
Mileage.
Yeah. And so then after that, I went to a studio called Film Roman, which currently they do The Simpsons, and I did a few things that very obscure kind of pieces, and from there. I ended up. I went to Marvel Comics and I worked for Stan Lee on a Spider-Man show. back and this was '90s. And I was trying to get into Disney at the time, but I was preparing a portfolio because it was features, TV and features, and and I was trying to get my foot in the door in features.
Yeah. So Disney is like the ultimate. No, that was
at the time.
That's like the.
Yeah.
Wait, I mean, what about now? What would be like who's the top now?
Well, yeah, I mean, right now you've got like Pixar, you got you got Disney, DreamWorks, Sony. I mean, they just put out the last several movies of Spider-Verse kind of stuff was fantastic, and I mean, there's definitely other contenders, and now.
Yeah.
But for traditional hand-drawn, animation, I mean, Disney was definitely. Certainly at that time was, the peak of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Walt Disney, I've read a little bit about Walt Disney himself, and so like Bambi was the first film that's ever was created. No, is it like the first cartoon film? What was the first cartoon film? Oh, the Mickey Mouse.
Snow White was the first.
Snow White. Oh yeah. Sorry. Okay, Snow White was the first feature film.
Yeah, I mean they had cartoons before then.
Yeah.
Disney back in 1923, they started doing like the the Mickey Mouse shorts, and you may notice that Disney's changed or Mickey Mouse has changed a lot over the years.
Yes.
But it was all black and white. It was all just and they had these things called silly symphonies, which they would play music and they would have all flowers and trees and stuff do various things. And but the first actual feature which was full color, was 1937, I think it was. I could be wrong about that.
And that's Snow White.
So
Snow White comes out,
yep.
and that is a crazy success. Or no, that was a horrible success. I don't remember the story. Do you know his story of Walt, or were we just talking about something we none of us?
That happened. I mean, he won 7 Oscars.
Okay.
I mean, there were 7 little tiny Oscars for the 7 Dwarfs. No, but they did win, Best Picture. They won certain awards at that time, or either that or they mocked it up. I don't really know because it wasn't part of the Academy Awards. Disney, animation.
Animation certain was because it
at
didn't
that
exist,
time,
of course.
But yeah, that was the first one, and it was a brand new art form at that point.
Nobody knew about it.
No one knew it. And it was considered it was going to be just a complete failure, but they did it, and they did another one, and eventually it became this, behemoth. Now Disney is like this massive success,
Huge.
I mean, it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody knows about
Everybody knows, Disney.
And so, what I heard though about Snow White, is it true? That's not an original film. It was already written by somebody before.
It's based on the Brothers Grimm storyteller. The Brothers Grimm did a bunch of fairy tales, like Little Mermaid, a lot of them. There's a ton of these things, and Disney took a lot of these things, and they took big liberties with them. But they would develop these stories out more into a different kind of context, rather than like a short story that's gonna take you 20 minutes to read.
Yeah, what amazes me is that you have a book, right? Somebody created something to say Little Mermaid, the Snow White. They imagine that's the original person, but that person didn't go very far with it.
No, not really.
Right? It would have just died off if it didn't get created and put into the animation, created into this crazy movie where the everyday person who didn't want to read saw this movie.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally.
It's the same thing with a lot of movies that have come out where the book is like whatever, and then the movie comes out and everyone watches it.
Yeah.
Isn't that like, what's your take on that sort of aspect that like, hey, this thing could have been nowhere if nobody animated it?
Oh, it definitely never would have been. I mean, The Little Mermaid is a great example because that was made by Hans Christian Andersen. Wrote that. Who knows when? But I mean, it was a long time ago. When they were fairy tales were what were being written at that time. Later on when they developed that, I mean, also Disney altered a lot of these stories because in the story. The Little Mermaid, the end of it, the whole point of it is unrequited love. That's kind of the theme about it, and it's a story about this girl who falls in love with a man. She gets her legs. She sacrifices her life as a mermaid with the deal that she has to return within 3 days if he doesn't fall in love with her. He doesn't in the actual story, and she turns into sea foam. That's the end.
Really? Are you serious?
Yeah. So so they're like, let's have a happy ending. So that's what they did.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wanted to work at Disney, but now you're working at Marvel, which Marvel is amazing.
Oh, Marvel's great, yeah. And I got to work, on a Spider-Man with Stan Lee, which was awesome. I mean, an icon of our times, and that was really cool. But I actually was just taking a temporary job at that point. I was doing character design, which is the design of what you actually see. And I wanted to get into because there's a magic about animation, and feature animation, Disney specific, was kind of the pinnacle of the art form, really. And television, by nature of the cost and how much they, the lack of control, it goes overseas. They don't have the kind of budgets and
You're saying at Marvel or where?
Yeah, Marvel, any television kind of Saturday morning cartoons. Back then they were Saturday morning cartoons. I don't know if they have them.
Now they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're all the time. But the budget's not there. The timing's not there. So the quality is not going to be there. They do great with what they have, but it's not going to be, as an art form, it wasn't at that level.
Right. Right, because it's just money. Like, if you're an episode for 30 minutes doesn't do the same thing as, for example, whatever. Like some massive thing that's like millions of dollars for 2 hours.
It's a major difference in the finances and the time that take, because Disney, they'll take 4 years to make a movie or more.
Yeah.
And whereas these when you're working in a television studio, you got like a 22-minute episode, you've got a month to work on it, and then it goes overseas and they spend several months on it. But it's not like they have years and years.
Right. It's quick.
Yeah.
So what was like the most exciting part of that working at Marvel? Like, what was it that you got to do that was like, this is the next thing, this is amazing?
Well, when I worked on that, I got that job because I thought, oh, cool, I get to design all the characters. Well, when I went down there, I got to design all the human characters like Aunt May and Peter Parker, and I was like, this isn't what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to get to draw Spider-Man, so or the various villains, you know what I mean? And Doc Ock.
You got like the vanilla,
I know, and I got like the old, lady and the, So I didn't love it, but
okay.
But they were cool people though. But so that was me doing.
So you got to do that, and then you went from there, and then what was next for you?
After then, I went to Disney, and then my first job there was.
So what you wanted?
Yeah, that is what I wanted. Yeah, I worked on. I went over there as a story artist on Hunchback of Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked on Hunchback of Notre Dame, Mulan, Hercules, and Tarzan. And then from there, I went to DreamWorks. And I was there for 15, 16 years.
Wow. And so when you went to Disney, so I'm assuming, and again, I could be totally wrong, but your pay, each time you're moving, are you going up in pay?
Yeah.
You're getting, you're going up in ranks and up in pay. Mm-hmm. So you went now to Disney. What did they pay you?
Back then, what was I making back then? There's a union out there. It's a cartoonist union, and there's union minimums for what they'll pay. And I think at the time it was like $1,200 a week, I think, is what their minimum was. I don't remember what I was making.
But whatever it was, you were at the minimum.
Yeah,
but the minimum
it was
for
so
you
much
was
more than I
that.
expected. I didn't care because I lived in an apartment. I'm a young guy. I was and I was doing what I loved to do, so it didn't really matter. Yeah. And it pays well.
Yes.
It pays enough that you can get by, and and they have a pension plan. And it was great. Of course, when you're in your 20s, you don't know what a pension plan is. You don't care.
Sure.
You're not thinking of the future.
Yeah. Well, okay, so like Tarzan, like probably the vast majority of people who are watching this have seen like a Tarzan or Mulan. Like Mulan, I love Mulan.
Yeah,
like,
Mulan's great.
I loved it. So, what parts did you do in, like, let's say Mulan? Like, what was it what did you contribute to that?
Well, my contribution, we work in story, we do iterations of a show, which we'll do storyboards where we'll do a series of drawings, which act as a blueprint, as I said, and then they'll do temporary dialogue, temp music, and you watch it like a giant slideshow, and then you analyze it, what's working, what isn't working. The second act is kind of slow. I don't like this character, the ending sucks, or whatever it is, and you take it down and you remake it. And you do this quite a few times until you get the final product. And really what happens, like everything, you run out of time. That's what actually ends up being what you see on the film. But in that, so Mulan, I was working on Tarzan, and Tarzan, the directors and producers went to Africa on a research trip, and so they loaned me out for 3 weeks. I wasn't on Mulan for very long.
Okay.
Yeah, so I helped out on an earlier version of the introduction of the villain. And then, that evolved over time. So, but it was an earlier version that I had contributed to.
Okay, fine. So Mulan was somewhat minor compared to Tarzan. So in Tarzan, what was your contribution in Tarzan? On
Tarzan, I did most of the action sequences. I did. Me and another guy named Kevin Harkey. He also did. He did the baboon chase, which was great at the beginning, and the baby Tarzan. I killed the leopard.
Yeah.
And what else did I do? And I did some alternate kind of endings, which they change, And I think. And so I don't know. There was
Is this stuff confidential, like alternate endings?
No.
Is that like so like?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
in fact, Disney had released a DVD a while back, and it had the alternate ending on it, but it was in storyboards. Now, when you see the storyboards, it doesn't look. There's drawings, and sometimes they can get pretty sketchy and kind of not great looking. So people, and what they'll do is they'll test screen these things. They'll show these to an audience, and they're like, and they might cut it in with actual film because sections are getting done while you're still developing the whole story. So something, and they'll watch it, and they'll be like, well, I don't like the part that's not in color. Well, yeah, back then we didn't do it in color. They're just sketches. Yeah, okay, what's the idea? What's the framework, which will become a movie? So yeah, so that's
Nice. I recently saw like one of these memes about Tarzan that he's swinging on the rope and he's holding this lady in both arms, and it shows like his butt crack.
I saw something about that.
And it was like he's holding the vine with his butt crack.
No, I think I saw that.
What's up with that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't remember ever seeing that. So
Okay.
I mean, I saw the meme, but I was like, I thought that was kind of funny.
Fine. I mean, they're swinging. I mean, there must be mistakes. Like, what are some like bloopers that have come out? Or I mean, do they get fixed or
They
what?
do, yeah. And in fact, I was just having this conversation with someone just yesterday, which is kind of ironic because they were talking about how the subliminal messaging that is claimed that Disney like puts out.
I've looked when I've seen someone, I've searched a video and I don't see them.
Yeah, they're not there.
I think they're not there. I think it's made up. Like there's so many accusations that people go on this, and I'm like, dude, I'm like, I'm gonna go find out.
Yeah.
And I'll play the movie. I'm like, it's not there.
Well,
this is totally made up.
Well,
like,
you know what?
why did people make up garbage and sling it? Like, I don't understand.
Well, actually, they didn't make it up because a lot of times that imagery will have been in there. So what'll happen, but it's not like the company is trying to promote this stuff.
Yeah.
What happened is some gag was put in by an artist. It was a prank. And because I was saying, there's 24 frames of film per second, right?
Yeah.
So if you slip a drawing in there, and then you're in dailies, which is where you're watching the whole thing. The directors and
the director will miss it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're not going to see something that's one frame out of 24 frames. So it'll get in, and then someone would still frame it. Now, back when there was like DVD, or before DVD, it was before DVDs. This was when VHFs, and someone's actually going frame to frame, which is quite a task to find that stuff.
Wow.
But they would find these things, and then Disney, as soon as they would find out about it, they would correct it and put it back out. But that's why people believe there was like the subliminal messaging. It was a prank done by some random artist.
So the truth is, it's more like an Easter egg kind of sort of idea. Like a little hidden little prank in there, like, ha ha ha, some person who did this film, like, ha ha, I put the word dick in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Ha, ha, like, whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. He said, I didn't know if I could say. So I was like, oh, I'm freed up now. I can talk to.
It's crazy.
I know, it is pretty funny.
Okay, so they're actually true. Actually, in a way, there's little ones where like the lion comes out and like it says sex or whatever. Someone puts that in. One drawing out of whatever, one picture, and it gets missed. Okay, and then someone fixes it later.
Yeah, as soon as
those were in there. Were you part of any of those?
I did not do any gags. Okay. That I'll ever tell you about.
Okay.
Yeah. There's several of them that. There was one. I think there was. It was a picture, which I actually have the VHS. It was of the Little Mermaid, where you see in the background. There's these spires, and there's this palace, and there was a that someone had put in there. Well, when they discovered it, they took it off. And
but
it does exist. I have it. But
well, you didn't do that one.
No, I didn't. I didn't do it. But it was funny too. I also worked on a film called Over the Hedge, and Over the Hedge was a story about these little woodland animals that were like going over a hedge into a neighborhood in suburbia and like stealing hot dogs or whatever. And so I did a movie poster for it, or what the blueprint of what became a movie sketch. And it was this character. His name is RJ. It was voiced by Bruce Willis. And he has this fishing line, and he's fishing off of this. He's getting a hot dog off of a barbecue, and so it's on a full movie poster, right? So it was fine. So when they actually took that image and then they rendered it out in computer and stuff and made it as a poster, they condensed it to a DVD size things. Now when it gets it, it's like RJ's here, and there's this wiener right here. And the way it was a hot dog. Yeah. And it was so phallic. You're like, oh my God. We're all like going, are you serious? No one saw this. Really, no one saw this. And someone had to see that, but you got recalled.
Okay. Wow. So there's little gags in there all the time. Okay, cool. So, all right. So go over on your career. So you're doing these movies. You're making plots. You're deciding who dies, who lives, what happens, who smacks who, and then what happens. Like, what would be like some of the biggest part, or where you had a humongous play in a role? Like at some point you get promoted, and what was your highest sort of role and position in which company?
Well, I've Probably in the major companies, I did several head of story positions, which is the head of the story department. So I would be working with the writers and the directors and with the story crew, and I was maintaining communication lines between them and yeah, I mean, it's largely political position to keep people, the directors from killing the story artists and the story artists from killing the director, and it
To
was largely
direct,
that.
manage people.
Yeah, it's a management kind of a position, but you're also, I mean, you're in, a little bit of a bigger role in terms of like being able to influence the way a movie will go, and I mean, as such, I mean, to some degree, depending on the circumstances, on a couple movies I worked on, the director, would have a nervous breakdown or something, so you kind of take over in that at that rate, and you're
Oh
working
wow.
in editorial. So I did,
Oh wow.
a short time doing that.
Yeah. Oh wow. That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's like a hot take.
yeah.
Okay. So head of story. How many head of stories are there? For example, in DreamWorks, if you're head of story, are there multiple heads of story?
Well, each film will have a head of story.
Okay.
And sometimes they'll have more than one. Depending on circumstances on the movie. Or if they just want to give a carrot to somebody, and two people they want to keep, and they're going to threaten to leave, and they both
You're
get
both
a
head
head
of
of
story.
story. They'll do a co-head of story. Yeah, that definitely happens.
So what was you were head of story for like which movies at DreamWorks?
On DreamWorks, I was head of story on the Road to El Dorado, which was their second hand-drawn animation.
Oh, I actually saw that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And me and a guy named Ronnie Del Carmen, we did a co-head of story. And he then later on, he was one of the creators of Up. He did a lot of those great sequences in Up.
Oh, nice. Up
Yeah,
is amazing.
yeah, he's great. He's a brilliant, filmmaker. And I worked with him on Batman as well. And he was working there at the same time. And then went up to Pixar. And then, let's see, I did that. I had a story on Sinbad, and there was a Sinbad movie for a while. And then I ended up stepping down from that and away from that picture for a while. But for a while, I was doing the head of story on that. I was head of story on a movie called Over the Hedge, and which was the one with the hot dog.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And and then I was had a story on one of the Kung Fu Panda Secrets of the Masters was the name
Okay.
of it. It was a
Series? Is it a
direct
series or
to
a movie,
video or something kind of. It was a short based on the Kung Fu Panda series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and so then, what was the peak and of all your career? What was like? Where did you get paid the most, and how much was that?
How much did I get paid
Yeah,
the most? Well, I mean, the most I got was as a creative director of a different studio, but I probably shouldn't get into that.
Okay.
But as a staff person, I'll just say the basic range for like a story artist or a head of story is generally between $3,500 and $5,000 a week. That's essentially
Like 250K.
Yeah, roughly that.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
And so making cartoons, making hundreds of thousands a year.
Yeah, no, it was
That's
great.
not a bad life.
No, it was pretty good. Yeah, I mean that was the upper end is $5,000 a week, but it's a comfortable existence. It is, and you can get, and it's fun. So, yeah,
Nice.
And it like anything, it depends on who you work with, And anymore, I mean, people, I really want to work on this and this. I don't care what I work on anymore. I just care who I work with because that's what's going to be. It's going to be a fun experience or it's not, So it's you find your niche, you find your people that are
And you're mostly talking about like your boss. So you get a direction. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Or you're the people working with you, like everything?
All of them, just the studios in general, because each production on a story crew, there'll be anywhere from 8 to 12 people ish, give or take a little bit. On a crew, then you'll have a head of story, and you'll have probably 2 directors, you'll have a couple producers, and but that's and an editorial staff and writers. So that's the kind of the people that you kind of deal with in that realm, and you kind of want to work. Mainly, you want to work with directors that like you and like your work, and producers and ones that you feel are going to support you, And sometimes that's not the case, and sometimes it is. So we all find our tribe, right? Who do you get along with, and who do you work with well.
And so how does that work? Like HR hires you, and then you go to get a director, and the director hates you, and then then you just are fighting and making a movie together.
Well, I mean, basically, usually the bigger studios, you go in usually on a production, so it's usually like anything. It's a lot of it based on who do you know that can kind of and is there an opportunity at that time, and you kind of get in that way, and you find out what the lines are. You give them what they want, and you kind of ride the wave that way. At the end of a project, at the bigger studios, they'll retain their artists and they'll move them on to another because there's several movies that are kind of in development at that point. And so, if you don't work out on one, unless you're, just a real problem, they'll move you to another project. I mean, there is a chemistry that is inherent in the whole system. So, someone may be really valuable, but they may not work on a show. That definitely happens. And the bigger studios will absorb that and keep the people anyway.
Okay, and how big is the talent pool? Like, how many people are actually doing this kind of storyboarding animation? Is there, like, just a line of people that are all pretty good and they just don't get jobs? Or are you thinking, like, pretty much they're looking for talent all the time because there's not enough?
I think they're always open to talent, but, DreamWorks at its, when they had the probably the biggest story pool, because there's a lot of other departments too, but, probably about 65 people I think they had. Maybe it was 85. I don't remember exactly. It's something that had a 5 in it. So and it was 60 or 85, and that was their group of people that they would draw on to make the movies, and they would have, I don't know, at the time they were wanting to do 2 movies a year, which means they had to have like 8, 9 in development at some stage. And there's stages that are being developed with just a writer and a director or the development crew, and they're before artists are ever even really on it. And there's also art directors and designers, and so there's all this is considered kind of the pre-production stuff, the stuff you actually prepare the film, and then when it goes into a production pipeline is when you get the animators, and that's when 300 people are going to be on the thing on traditional animation, or even more now with computers.
Right.
You'll see at the end, like, credits go for days.
Yes, it's huge.
Yeah, but that's all stuff from production on. The pre-production, the planning stage, it's usually not that big.
Don't get credits.
Well, they'll get credits, but they're not part of it.
Okay, so now these days, there's so many films being produced, so many shows, so many movies. However, there's also there's AI.
Yeah.
AI is coming out, and what is the future of animators, of cartoons with this AI? Have you already seen a destruction of jobs through AI taking over roles that can just now be automated?
Yeah, absolutely. No. You can't compete with that, and it's actually pretty terrifying for a lot of people in the industry.
So how does it work? Like, which roles do you think? Which roles have already basically been gone?
Well, a lot of the things, a lot of design work will be done, and believe it or not, you can write scripts on those things too. In fact, there's even going to probably be a union strike probably coming up in the next couple of months. This specifically for that. It's a lot of what the writer's strike was about recently. It's just like, okay, why do you need people? And you do need people. If you're going to make an art form, but I think a lot of things will change, and there has to be like kind of an ethical viewpoint on how you approach this. I think, but studios they want to make money. They're not evil ogres, but they want to make money, and they're gonna cut corners. And when you can get like AI, you can write out a prompt to design in a Disney style, as an example. Whatever your mock-up is. This dragon princess who's like running up a hill, being chased by fireflies. It's gonna render it out in seconds, and something that would take months for other people to do design. And it's instant. Of course, the thing is growing at a very quick rate. And of course, we've all seen Terminator movies. We know how this ends.
Yeah. That's true.
That's kind of the way it's going right now. But there's satisfaction in actually the job itself, which is what I think you have to concentrate on as an artist. And it's like you're familiar with the John Henry kind of concept, right?
No.
John Henry was a story about basically John Henry was a man who was like making railroads, and he did it all by hand and stuff. And the machine came, and they were like making them. And there's cartoons about it and stories about it, but eventually his heart gives out because he's trying to compete with a machine that he can't compete with, So
you have to focus on a different task.
Yeah.
You can't be doing what the machine does well is do just this rote thing.
Yeah.
If your job as an artist is some rote thing, for example, what I assume is like the guys in Korea that just make one scene to go to the next, that could be more replaced because like the original creation was done, the character's there, you're just kind of making them connect. I would assume that goes first.
Sure.
Not the creation of the character, because in AI, at least at this point, the AI makes amalgamations of other characters and other stuff. It's not like totally original.
No, it's not. It's a giant plagiarism machine.
It's a huge plagiarism machine.
Yeah, it is.
That's what AI does. It just takes little pieces of all stuff and puts it together. So an original idea, the artist can still create something that an AI can't do yet. Maybe one day it could. I don't know.
Maybe instantly after it sees it. But
exactly.
Someone has to
That's
create
right.
it first.
That's right. Somebody has to create it. And then that person will keep their job. That they're not going to try to do the same thing that the railroad is going. That the machine, like that's, you know what I mean. That's not a job. That's not a job that you need to be like proud of. Like, I'm doing it, but you're not going to beat a machine at that.
Yeah.
But you can beat a machine at doing something totally original.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way it's going to have to be. And also there's an educational kind of element, I think, from an audience. Because the thing is an if you're going to have something original, now obviously we're dealing in something that's a very commercial industry, right? But I think the really successful stuff, and you can see the stuff that's more successful and less successful, is based on what are you trying to say. The original stuff, it's original, but it's also it speaks to everyone. It's like the whole concept of, okay, well, what is good for every, I mean, they're universal truths. When you see like the really successful stuff, they speak to you, and there's something resonant in human beings. And that's what makes a good story. Now that, and if you start to, shoehorn different alternate ideas or points of view or things that are not based on something that appeals to everybody, you're not going to appeal to everybody. So when you're like dealing with the telling of a story, the telling of a story has to do with basically, if I'm going to tell you a story that's original, you're going to be interested to the degree that I communicate to you. I have an idea and I give it to you and you understand what it is. It's an idea. But someone has to generate that concept. AI I can't do that.
Right.
They can do synthetic versions of that.
Yeah.
But they can't come up with
just mutants.
Yeah.
Like Frankensteins.
Yeah.
Which they could be beautiful Frankensteins.
Yeah, and I mean certainly there could be one could consider that there's benefits to from a moat to draw from. You could actually, as a tool. I don't know that it's a horrible thing, but
I don't think so at all.
No,
I think it's, if it could be replaced by a thing, why not?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, that's the thing, is where on these strikes and stuff, like, can different people adapt? Like that guy who his heart went out because he's making the railroad. He has to adapt and be like, okay, I'm going to build machines. I'm going to fix machines. I'm going to design machines. Maybe I'm going to do something else other than a railroad. I don't know what he's going to do.
Of course, that was a fable, but yeah.
Yeah, but
but
I mean, it's a good story.
Yeah, no,
it's a good story because right now that's so relevant in the
exactly
AI field. You know what I mean?
100%.
Like, I'm going to draw faster than anybody. It's like, no, dude, you will never go as fast as an AI.
No, you can't.
You just can't. But you might do something that resonates more. And in fact, back to this whole thing of like Disney taking these stories, in a way, wasn't that plagiarizing? Did these guys, like the Little Mermaid artist, was he dead by the time the Little Mermaid was made?
Yeah. Well,
so they never made anything.
After 100 years, it's no longer public. Yeah, it's public.
So this was old story stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're all around.
So I mean, essentially, like, the Disney stuff was all plagiarized in the first place. So like, AI was, I mean, in a way, but not plagiarized because
well, it was
free. Yeah. It was free at that point.
Yeah,
it becomes public domain.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they won't let you take Mickey Mouse public domain.
Well, actually, yeah, that's interesting because this year is the 100-year marker. I'm curious what will happen with that, but I can't imagine that.
No, what they do is they like change and be like, well, no, it looks like the new Mickey Mouse, so that's I don't know what they're doing.
I imagine.
But in theory, you could take the original Mickey Mouse and sell it like all crazy and pay no royalties because it's public domain. No,
I would think so. I'm not a lawyer, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's the deal.
Yeah.
Awesome, Jeff. So what do you say as like party words on here to someone who's saying, hey, I have a dream in, let's say, art or in some specific any industry, a business, something they wanna pursue, and they might think, like why would I do it? Like, I should do something else that's more practical. What do you say to people who are feeling that way?
I'm just looking at myself from where I've approached things. I did what I did because there wasn't anything else to do. This is what I wanted to do, and it's really what I was, more skilled at. And I'm, I can't even balance a checkbook, so I'd be a bad accountant.
Yeah.
And I think you got to follow your dreams. You got to make it work for you. Obviously, you got to be able to, put food on the table. But I just do what you want to do. I mean, I think you owe it to yourself to do. You don't want to have a mundane job that everyone hates. What kind of life is that?
What kind of life is that? I agree with you.
Live your life, man.
Absolutely.
Do what you want to do.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you always wonder, why didn't I do that? Or could I have been this? And I don't know. I don't want to end up that way.
Absolutely. I agree. I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think anybody was like, when they're 5 or 10 or something's like, you know what? I want to grow up and go to a job where I despise every Monday. And I just want to wait till Friday and get my drunk. And like, that's what my life is going to be. It's like, no, dude, like, enjoy your life.
Yeah.
And so do something that you love. And like, yes, you're going to need money. But what's interesting is you made great money doing the thing that you love. And I think a lot of people, when you get good at something, you're going to love it too. So anyway, it's a funny line, but there is still a lot of opportunity in art and learning to even use AI. That's another job too.
Yeah,
somebody, I don't know, who knows.
Definitely, yeah.
So
I mean, everything's like that. I mean, yeah. Earlier on, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Progress, it occurs, but originality is human, you know, and I think that's the thing that has to be like kind of fostered. And I will say, I just one thing about for myself when I was a kid, I had a mother who was fantastic, and she would always support everything I wanted to do. And I didn't even realize this for years, but I would draw all the time, and she would say, you know, I would say, I'm going to work at Disney when I grow up. That's what I would say. And she had friends of hers that would say, "Oh, you really think it's okay to encourage him like that? I mean, he's going to have his heart broken. He's never going to do it." My mom never put that on my plate. You know what I mean? She was like, "No, if that's what he's going to do, that's what he wants to do."
So they would say to her, or they would say to you?
No, they would say to her, and she blocked it. She was like, would not let that through to me, which was great because I never really had any considerations that I couldn't do anything.
Wow.
Because, you know, if you can do it, you know, if you have the considerations you can't do it, well, that's going to eat into your whole, you know.
That's true.
You have to decide what you're going to do and do it. And that's what it's going to be. It's your life.
And if you don't have a mother like that who's going to block it from you, when you get it, pretend you didn't hear it.
Exactly.
Right?
Throw it
I mean,
away.
you could do that too. You need to have your own mother who blocks the stuff and be yourself because people will criticize you.
100%.
100%, like hard. So that's a great story.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Awesome, Jeff. If anybody wants to reach out to you, is there a way that they can to say like, hey, I want to maybe get some connection to some animation or design anything, or can anybody reach out to you? Are you open to that?
You know, I have an Instagram feed, which is just Jeff A. Snow.
Yep.
You know, so yeah, I'll
check him out. Send him a message. One of the top animators and story creators of our time, Mr. Jeff Snow. Thanks for coming on the show.
Sure.
Awesome, brother.
All right.